Welcome to Adjunctitis, from surviving to thriving, teaching hacks to reduce stress, save time, and avoid common pitfalls. I'm April Brown, an associate professor of journalism at Cal State LA. Welcome to Season 2. I'm proud to announce that Adjunctitis is a 2024 Webby honoree in the Advice and How-To category. Now, on to the content. We began our focus on how to support students with disabilities in the last episode, and we are going to continue it now. Welcome to episode 21. It's not always visible. First, a story. I've noticed in the past few years, some students just stop coming to class or doing any of the work. They may not even respond to messages asking if they're okay. And there can be all sorts of reasons for that. Money, time, priorities, personal problems. But for some students, it can be a disability that prevents them from coming back. And often we really have no idea. One student I got to know pretty well stopped coming to class one semester or making contact, and I found out after a while they'd been suffering from a serious mental illness. This was a good student who was trying really hard to manage the situation, with medication and therapy. So we made some attendance and assignment due date accommodations so that student could stay on track once they recovered, and it really made a big difference. So we're going to continue our conversation now with Cal State LA's director of the Office for Students with Disabilities, Gonzalo Centeno, who will give us more of the ins and outs on accommodations. Gonzalo Centeno, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for the invitation.
I don't know that students would ever listen to this podcast in great numbers, but there are a lot of students who are requesting the accommodations in higher numbers for psychiatric illnesses. That could be, I think, depression, anxiety in particular from COVID. That has been I've seen more of that in my personal experience in my classroom. And then autism, which I'm doing a documentary on a young boy with autism. So I've been reading a lot about it. There are more people being diagnosed with it.
Correct.
So for students who are coming in to a university and may not understand what your office is or where to go or what kinds of things are available, how should we talk to our students about that? Because it's a line I have in my syllabus and I go over with students, we make accommodations if you have a disability, but I don't really go over anything in detail about the types of resources that your center has. And now I'm thinking maybe I should. Should we make it a point to tell our students that those things are out there for them?
I agree with you 100%. I think if you mention that, especially as you're going over the syllabus, it's important to let students know that we are on campus. We do offer support services. So if you feel you're experiencing a challenge related to a disability, definitely to come and visit us, and then we'll determine whether or not they meet the eligibility criteria to register with our office and receive support services.
Do students have to go in with a diagnosed condition, or can that kind of process be initiated by your office?
So not necessarily. So I'll give you an example. Last year I had two graduate level students that were coming in because they were just experiencing challenges with test taking, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. They knew the material, and they went into the testing location and either ran out of time, couldn't focus, forgot information. So many times students go undiagnosed, and we don't do a diagnosis in our office. So that's very important. But we do work with the functional limitations that the student shares with us. And if we feel, based on the information provided, that they meet the eligibility for support services, then we'll talk about that. In cases where we need more information from a licensed professional, then we will refer the student to a licensed professional to be able to get that information, whether it be CAPS, whether it be their own private physician, their own therapist, with whatever the case may be.
For our listeners, CAPS is our counseling program on campus, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it's called Counseling and Psychological Services.
And I think most campuses have those now because there are just so many students who have needs that aren't being met elsewhere.
Correct.
Or haven't been identified even. Is there anything in particular that you wish people would know about what your office does that maybe we haven't covered?
Right. So, I mean, aside from the typical accommodations that we offer, and I say typical only because I work with it every day, not that they're typical to everyone else, right? But aside from the all testing, we also provide note taking services. We also provide sign language interpreting, real time captioning for students who are deaf or hard of hearing. And we do work with a lot of campus partners to make sure that some of the support services they provide are, I don't want to say best tailored, but probably better approach for the student with the disability. One example is the Center for Academic Success. So one of the things they do is they typically have walk-in appointments for 30 minutes, whereas with a student that's registered with OSD may be eligible for an hour set appointment because this way there's a little more prep time, there's a little more tailoring of how the approach goes, but that's an option that's available for students as well. And that's one of the collaborative efforts that we do with that particular area.
It just occurred to me there's a student responsibility component that I didn't necessarily think about because it's not on us to assume that a student has a disability. In fact, we probably, I suspect, should not do that if they're behaving in a certain way. It's the student's responsibility to seek out and, I guess, get these accommodations, not for us. We can tell you they are here if you think you might need them, but not to say, hey, you might be autistic. Let's do this for you.
Exactly. Thank you so much for saying that. So it is the student's responsibility to self-disclose if they need accommodations. And by self-disclose, I don't mean self-disclose their diagnosis, but self-disclose that they need accommodations. So for example, the notification that you received is not sent automatically by OSD. It is initiated by the student. So the student goes into their OSD portal profile. They select the class where they want the accommodations to be going to. They select the specific accommodations, and then the system will send it off to the instructor. Without the student taking that first step, you will not know if they get accommodations or not. Sometimes you'll have a student that will approach you and say, well, I have a disability and I need more time on my exam. And if you never received a notification, then I would just recommend if you are registered with OSD, then make sure that you submit your notification or that you meet with someone there before I can approve an accommodation.
So that's the formal process. We shouldn't just assume, hey, uh, you may not really need it, but you may just want that extra half
Yeah,
hour.
exactly.
I'm sure that's happened before.
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes you have a student, for example, that is really great at all their homework and everything, but come to exams, they just do really, they're not doing very well. So what we want to do is, you can approach it and speak with them, well, like what's going on, how can I best help you? This is a very hard conversation to have because you don't want to say, you know what, I think you're experiencing this. We never want to say that. But, you can offer resources. You can say, there's the Center for Academic Success, which can offer tutoring. And then if you feel that you need additional support, there's also this. It's also OSD, and they provide direct support services to students, depending on what you feel you could benefit from. And just show genuine concern for the student. I'm concerned about the exam and the quizzes, and they're not coming through. And so, how can I help you? What can we do?
And you mentioned a hard conversation. I think we also, as faculty, have to be careful not to push for too much information. Like that would potentially be illegal.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the legality, but we definitely don't want to infringe on the student's privacy. That's important. Even when you get a notification, it's interesting, because sometimes you'll get a notification and there may not be something physically apparent about the student having a disability. I've had students tell me that faculty have sometimes said, well, I don't think you need that extra time. You look fine. You'll do fine. And that's
Do
been such
not
a
do.
challenge there. Do not do. If they forwarded a notification and they formally requested accommodations, let's just go with it. Unless the accommodation, like I said, fundamentally alters the intent of the program, then let's start the discussion and let's start talking about it.
When I receive a notice for a particular student, I usually just look at what it says, figure out how to apply that, and carry on as if everything is fine. I don't go to the student and ask anything, but should I?
So this is the thing. It's interesting you mentioned that. When students get their accommodations set up and they've met with the counselor, we always tell the student, when you submit the notification, meet with the faculty member at least by the beginning of the semester and say, hey, my name is X, Y, and Z. I sent in the notification. Did you receive it? And then have a conversation. Maybe the instructor wants to know, well, what information would you like me to give you? Everything, whatever. But opening up that line of conversation, I think it's important. And that's what we advise the student. Is it done always? No. And we respect that, But, we do try to tell students it really helps a lot with the process and it makes things a lot more run smoothly during the semester. But sometimes students don't want to discuss it, don't want to ask about it. But all you can do as faculty is just present the information as you would to all the other students. And if the student has a question, then they will ask you. If a student wants to discuss their accommodation, I would always suggest try to do it in private because sometimes students will go up to you at the end of class, but then you have all these students hovering around because they want to ask you questions. So if you could just say, maybe hold that thought for a minute, and then maybe we can have that conversation in my office to allow for privacy.
My thanks to Gonzalo for sharing his wisdom on this issue. Gonzalo and I will go over a few more things on this subject, so you'll want to come back for episode 22. As always, there are resources related to the topic at hand on the teaching tools section of our website, adjunctitis.com. If you have questions you'd like me to try and answer, please send them to questions@adjunctitis.com. Meanwhile, social media is a great tool to get everyone involved in the conversation. Right now, we're on Threads, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube with the handle @adjunctitis. And you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/adjunctitis. If this has been helpful, we'd appreciate a follow, a thumbs up, or even a review. It does help more people find us. Please spread the word and help those who ask you for help. It's good teaching karma. Adjunctitis is a Look at It This Way production. I'm April Brown. Thank you for listening. Class dismissed.